There we go.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm Kirk Oatman. The company is I'm in Control. What I'd like to do is just be sure, as all of these plans, these multi-year plans, the programs are being designed, that everybody keeps in mind what to us is an often misunderstood segment of the market, of the commercial building market. And that is, when people talk about commercial buildings, they think small buildings and large buildings. Yeah, in the US, there are 5 million commercial buildings. 300,000 of them are over 100,000 square feet. All the rest are under. In California, the space that we talk about, 10 to maybe 60,000 square feet, there are about 100,000 buildings like that in California. Those buildings, they're not that hard to reach segment that is small business under 10,000 square feet. We're talking about something different. We're talking about buildings that are owned by cities, counties, maybe campuses, schools, that have maybe between 5 and 20 package units on the roof. These buildings have peak usage of between 40 and maybe 90,000 kilowatts. And frankly, the programs, there's been progress in the past couple of years, seriously, but the programs still are very difficult to apply to these buildings. Many of the programs require too much paperwork. We can do a project for between $5,000 and $20,000 that reduces energy usage by, say, 20%, as well as providing demand response and all the other things you've talked about. You can't justify a large amount of paperwork for that small a single project. So there are concepts of A, reducing paperwork, B, being able to aggregate multiple projects, say for a city or a county, into one application if you do have a paperwork requirement. The other is allowing for things like in schools. Some school districts have literally hundreds of modular buildings with all of those, as we know, very, very inefficient barred units hanging off the end. These are tremendous targets, and the programs are still difficult to apply to them. So I do have a question for the two speakers of how their programs and plans are beginning to direct those buildings, but also to have everybody on this call keep this in mind, because it's tremendous when you think of, in California, 100,000 commercial buildings being able to reduce 20%. And we're not talking about replacing equipment with large capital expenses, because they're not going to do it for these Class B and C buildings on the whole. So a control system and other lower cost applications of efficiency and DR can make a huge difference. And so only saying, please apply these to your plans and your programs as you go forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just preface that maybe Sebastian would be a good speaker to address that with, you know, MCE's commercial programs. But yeah, like you said, everything is pretty segmented, whether it's for a business, publicly owned building, multifamily, residential, single. They're all different rules and regulations and programs, and I definitely hear that. And depending on where you are, if you're, you know, part of MCE's territory, they have commercial programs that, you know, might be able to address some of the buildings that you mentioned. If you're in another jurisdiction, you know, might be another story. So Sebastian, do you have anything for that, or any other BayREN folks on the call for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, my only comment there, Kellen, would be that I think acknowledging some of those challenges is important. And I think that one thing that we experience with some of that medium-sized business is that those facilities may not always have staff capacity or bandwidth to be able to do energy management in a way that a larger customer, like my example of Contra Costa County, might be able to. So I think that CCAs specifically, because our nature of being local government programs and having staff dedicated to do that, can really support and help some of those smaller businesses and medium businesses identify how we can leverage programs together. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Great, thank you. So no other questions in the room. Emily, do we have any online questions?
Yeah, I think this is for all of our speakers, but do you work with Cal OES on figuring out these resilience measures? For example, emergency neighborhood trainings for recovery after disaster, usually led by the fire departments, or any sort of other kind of public agencies that also deal with resilience. What is the relationship like when you're coordinating on these resilience programs? Maybe Aleka, do you want to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things, as I mentioned in our application process, is we had someone designated as the CRC lead to apply to participate in the pilot. But then we said, you need to tell us who's on your CRC team. And we kind of outlined who we thought might be a good fit for those CRC teams, with with not necessarily Cal OES, but county OES being part of that. We did reach out to Cal OES when we first started the program. And I think that what we're hoping, as we can do with BayREN, is to then share our lessons learned with folks. But I think the other piece at the local level to just kind of keep in mind is that we have both cities and counties participating in our pilot. And cities and counties, as you guys know, have different relationships with their Office of Emergency Management. There's different roles and responsibilities. And so I think there's still a really, really critical need for additional coordination, not only within counties, but across counties on these issues. And I think, what we're trying to do is kind of lift up the need and help people think this through. I would love to think about next steps of how we actually support more of that interjurisdictional, cross-jurisdictional coordination. And that also includes with that county OES as well as with the state.
And I just want to lift up something that came in from our technical assistance providers, which is that there are some libraries that are the site for CERT training, for example. And so just lifting up those examples to get our sites thinking about what's possible, and this it's sort of more ground up organic collaboration, I think can be a really successful way to inspire more coordination.
Sebastian, you want to talk about how MCE might work with these groups?
Yeah, I mean, echoing all of that, I would say that MCE and really all of the CCAs in recent years have expanded our communication capacity just with public information officers at the respective county OECs. When flex alerts and demand response events are taking place, making sure that folks know that, hey, there's an urgent need to conserve and to shift load during those periods. So that is something that I've seen quite a bit in recent years, and I would anticipate will continue, but always looking to build upon that.
We have time for one more, Kellen. There was also a question about outreach. So both for Sebastian, what did customer outreach and enrollment process look like for the Peak Flex program, or any of your other programs, I guess? And then I'll also throw that question to Aleka about what the outreach was like to get cities, buildings, counties participating in the Resilient Library Network. Sebastian?
Yeah, I think for Peak Flex, really what it looked like with me and my team, we're responsible for kind of managing the day-to-day one-on-one relationships with our key staff contacts at all of our 37 member communities. And so there was a lot of individual outreach to the different facilities managers and folks within public works and planning to educate them about the program and gauge interest that way. That's a smaller segment of our overall customer profile, right? That's 37 different communities, but we also did a pretty targeted marketing, education, and outreach campaign to our larger industrial and commercial customers as well. That included emails, that included direct mail, your traditional ME&O plan, to be able to just gauge interest. And I think one of the things that we found really successful in having launched the program last year and continuing it this year in 2023 is providing case studies on our website to really illustrate like what the actual savings were and how folks participated in the program. It's always great to have that, that third party validation and that real testimonial from a customer, which we've relied on pretty heavily.
Great. And I'll start and then hand it over to Rachel in case she has things to add. But again, in our application process, what we asked folks to outline for us is their CRC goals and specifically how they came to those goals. So how did they engage communities? And it looks really different for each of our sites. And that ongoing engagement looks really different for each of our sites. So what we did in this process as well is we launched the application in June, and we didn't have that due until the end of September. So we offered stipends for compensating community members. We offered facilitation support. And then we also had the ASAP training to help folks understand how to equitably engage communities. So I think it's absolutely critical, and it's something that we wanted to support, which is why we brought in ASAP. I'll see if Rachel has anything else to add.
I think that one lesson learned from the pilot is that, we really wanted to make the barrier to entry for this program as low as possible on some level. And I think that we're really interested in working with the sites to understand how we can better support them in taking advantage of some of the community engagement support opportunities that we provided. And I think for a lot of them, it just came down to time, which is what we hear very often. But I think that's something moving forward that we'll hope to engage the sites on, so that we can make those, have more engagement with those opportunities going forward.
Okay, that's everything for online. So over to you, Kellen, to wrap up, or if there's any more in the room.
Any other questions in the room? We're about getting there for time. So yeah, thank you, Sebastian, Aleka, and Rachel, and Emily for facilitating online. Thank you to the rest of the speakers, and thank you most of all for everybody who came today, online and in person. Just to put a bow on this, so again, slides will be posted and sent out. Another reminder to please fill out our survey so we can always be improving these forums. We're also going to be raffling off a prize. Usually it's like a pretty cool solar battery charger that you can take camping, that sort of thing. I'm not sure if we're doing that. Is that what we're doing? Okay. Yeah, so there's some incentive to fill out the survey. And just to put a bow on today, so this is the third policy forum we've had this year. It's our Q3. We started off the year talking about the gas infrastructure and potentially pruning that, in light of all electric buildings. And then we went into our all electric buildings viable with the grid and how it's currently set up and what's being done. And today we talked about resiliency with all electric buildings. And basically the main question is, can we do all electric buildings in California? And the answer is yes. Spoiler alert. But each of those forums, it's not just that simple of a question. We dive into the why and the how and what's being done to facilitate that pretty large and significant transition, really, when you think about our fuel sources. So I don't know if we're going to have more all electric building topics. We probably will. But yeah, I just wanted to make that note that all these last three forums, if you've been attending, have had a thread going through them. So yeah, I think that's it for me. Once again, thanks everybody, and we'll see you at the next one.